We're here today to talk about the bane of new Triple Triad players' existence, Same and Plus. And before we get into that, which we will in a lot of detail, get you really used to how they work and how to think better about spotting Sames and Pluses and seeing them in advance so you don't get screwed by rude combos. I want to say that the best way to play Triple Triad, competitively at least, against other humans is on ttadvance.net. And specifically, if you go to the chat, we're friendly, come talk to us, but ttadvance.net, every tool and site I talk about here, which there won't be many of, will be in the description, and you can go check it out. But it is a wonderful site, not near as active as it used to be, so you might not see it that active, but if you hit it at the right times, it's a wonderful place. That said, let's get into Same and Plus. So the first thing to look for, the very first thing, before you think about the numbers at all, is just, are there any squares that interact with multiple other squares? And in this case, there's one. And specifically, it's this square here. I'm going to call it 4, but it's also the middle left square. The squares are numbered when people talk about the game, starting at the top left is 1, top center is 2, top right is 3, middle left is 4, etc., like on a phone. But if you're not used to that, I'm going to try to also say top left, middle left, center right, that kind of thing as I describe each move. But that is the only square on the board that interacts with 2 cards at once. And to have a same or to have a plus, you must interact with 2 cards at once such that some condition is met. And the first condition that can happen is same. Now a same is when you face at least 2 cards, at least one of them must be an opponent's card. You can't set off the effect if you only attack your own cards. And what you need to do is have the same number facing each of those cards' numbers facing you. So here we're going to have an example of a same. This is the only same example I'll have for reasons we get into. Pluses are a lot more common. But it has a 1 facing a 1 and a 7 facing a 7. So it has the same facing both. At least one is an opponent's card. And the effect that has is it's going to flip all cards that aren't ours that it's doing a same on to our color. So in this case, when I play this card in 4 in the middle left square, it's going to flip their card Leviathan in 7 or in the bottom left. And we can see that happen. It says same, that's a same. And I'm going to move to the next example. We're not going to stick on games particularly long. All right, so we should be able to look at this position and first identify the square that there could be a same or a plus. There's only one on the board. There's one square that touches 2 squares that are occupied, 2 cards that are in play, and at least one of them is an opponent's card. And that square is, of course, 6, or middle right. Now, here, to have a same, we need to have a 10 up and a 10 down. We don't have that. No card in vanilla FF8 has that power. So, what else could potentially cause a rule flip? Well, we can have a plus. And so a plus occurs when your number facing one of their numbers, those add together to equal your number facing another number elsewhere on the board. So for instance, if we played this 6143, the top card we have listed, Glacial Eye, in 6, in that middle right square, that in-between square, it would have a 6 facing up towards a 10 down, that's 16, and a 4 facing down versus a 10 up, that's 14. If those numbers were to add together, we would have a plus. And I think the easiest way to check quickly for whether you have a plus is we know it's our up number and our down number. Those are the ones that interact with cards. And we know there are 10s facing both ways. And so what we do, I think the easiest way to do this, rather than just do the math with every card in our hand, is to say 10 minus 10 is 0. They're the same number. Therefore, we need the same number up and the same number down. And if we have that, that will necessarily plus, right? Because if we have 1 up, 1 down, 10 plus 1 will equal 10 plus 1. If we have 4 up, 4 down, 10 plus 4 will equal 10 plus 4. So in this case, we do have a card with the same up and the same down. We can look through our hand. We only have one card that meets this condition, but we have a 7 up and a 7 down. And if we play it in 6 in the middle right square, indeed, we will see, because at least one of the cards is our opponent's, we will see that card flip. So let's see it. And there you can see a plus, and now we've locked in so many cards and they couldn't attack ours at all. But we can continue this game, actually. because we again have a square to check. What's our square to check? Well, it's that middle top square, right? It's 2. And we see an 8 facing it from the right and a 10, or an 8 facing right towards it and a 10 facing left towards it. What's the gap between 10 and 8? I'm going to keep referring to gaps. I think it's the easiest and best way to think about this. The gap between 10 and 8 is 2. We need a 2 gap between our left and right values. Our first card, 3 left, right 1. That's a 2 gap. Our second card, 3 and 6, there's a gap of 3 between those numbers. That's never going to plus. 4 and 9, that's a gap of 5. That's not going to plus. Now for our 1 and 3, we need them to face the right way. If the 3 faces the higher number, the 10, and the 1 faces the lower number, the 8, well, 8 plus 1 is 9, 10 plus 3 is 13, that won't add up. But if our higher number faces the lower number, 3 faces 8, 11, and our 1 faces a 10, 11, we're going to have a plus. So we can play another plus here. And I think the easiest way, as I've said, to look for this is not to scan each of our cards in great depth and do a lot of math. It's to say, we need a card with a 2 gap, 2 higher left than right. And then just quickly we can scan our hand. Ah yes, 3 is 2 more than 1. That's the left and right. We've got it. We can play the move. So we're going to play the move in 2, in the middle top square. And I'm going to quickly check if they set us up again. They did not. But if you wanted to have practice for yourself, you could check, do we have a plus or a same? In 4, in the middle left square, we'd need a 5 gap, or a 7 up and a 2 to the right to same. Or in 8, the bottom center square, we'd need a 4 gap, and you can check in our hand if we have 4 gaps. Specifically, it has to be a gap of 4 going up and to the right, or a 5 up and a 9 to the right to same. We don't meet either of those conditions, so I'm going to move on to the next example. All right, so we should be able to quickly identify the square we need to check. It's the bottom middle square. It's 8, because 8 is the only square that interacts with 2 squares. So you'll notice there are 2 ways a card can interact with 2 squares. One is, if for instance there's a card, let's highlight the square, in 1 and another card in 3, there's an in-between square in 2, right? There's one in the top left and one in the top right. There's an in-between top middle square. But as we can see here, if there's a card diagonal from another card, the middle and the bottom left, 5 and 7, are diagonal from each other, it's going to create 2 squares that touch both of them, the middle left and the middle bottom, or 4 and 8. Here, 4 is occupied, so 8 is the only one that we can have the double interaction. And the more you look at sames and pluses, the more you look at diagonals. Diagonals start becoming a really important part of play. And we're going to later at the end of the video get into doing setups based on understanding the diagonals. Now here, we have a 7 facing down and a 10 facing to the right, facing towards our square. So if we have a 7 up and a 10 left, we'll have a same. We can check our hand. We have no 7s up, we have no 10s to the left. Neither condition is met. We're not remotely close to having a same. However, we could still have a plus, and pluses are more common because there are so many more configurations you could have a plus. To have a same, you need exactly a 10 left and exactly a 7 up. To have a plus, we need a 3 gap. That 3 gap could be 4 and 1, could be 5 and 2, could be 6 and 3, could be 7 and 4, all the way up to could be 10 and 7. Now if we look at our hand and look at the up value and the left value, sorry if this is really repetitive, but practice makes perfect. We want to drill this in. We need a 3 gap. Our bottom card, Iguion, or however it's pronounced, has an 8 and a 2, that's a 6 gap, facing up and left. Our next card, 6 and a 4, that's close, but it's a 2 gap, not a 3 gap. Our next card, X-Atmo87 or whatever, 4-3, that's a 1 gap, not going to do it. And our final card, Pandemonium, 10 and 7, that is a 3 gap. We're going to be playing that card. Note, it works whether or not whichever way the 10 and 7 are, because if it was 7 up and 10 left, that would be a same. It's the only configuration where that'll be the case, but it has a 10 up, 7 left. 10 plus 7 and 7 plus 10 will equal the same number. Now when we take it, we should now start understanding the combo rule as well, which is anything that we flip, so it has to have been the opponent's card, while using same or plus, anything that overpowers, it will flip as well. And that chain can keep going. And this is what really frustrates new players in FF8 or FF14, when you start getting comboed and suddenly all your cards flipped and you set up a game really well and it feels really unfair because you don't have a good feel for same or plus yet, and then the combo rule just exacerbates the pain and makes it really hard to take. Now here, when we go in 8, when we go in the middle bottom, we're going to flip the center and the bottom left. Do either of those cards overpower another card on the board that's the opponent's? Well, they both do. The 8 facing up overpowers the 4 down on Visage, and the 7 facing left also does. So when this combos, it's going to flip that card as well. We're going to plus, and then that plus is going to have a combo. Let's see it happen. Plus, combo, and everything flipped. So this worked out very nice for us. We flipped a lot of cards. And in fact, we have another example, because we can check the board. There's one square that interacts with 2 squares. Hopefully you're getting really good at spotting this. It's the top center, 2. That interacts with the card in the top left, 1, and the card in 5. You'll notice 5 interacts with a lot of squares. The card in 5 is really relevant to how pluses are going to work. Now, what's the gap there? Well, there's a 1 facing up and a 7 to the right, so we need a 6 gap. Now, our first card has a 3 left and a 7 down, only a 4 gap. But our next card has a 4 and a 10. That's a 6 gap. Does it face the right way? Yes, it does. 4 plus 7 equals 10 plus 1. But also, look at our next card, 8-2, 8-2. It has a 2 and an 8. 7 plus 2 equals 8 plus 1. It's another 6 gap. It's going to be a plus as well. So in fact, we could plus in 2 with either of these cards. And we should check, just so we know, will there be a combo? Well, the card in 5 is already ours, so that doesn't do combo. But the card 5 being the center, the card in 1, the top left, can overpower another card, so they flipped Visage. We're going to flip it right back when we combo here. You can see the plus, and you can see the combo flips the extra card, and we win this game very easily. In fact, we have another plus to finish off the game. What a game. We're going to win this one 9-1. Because, of course, there's a square that interacts with 2 cards. It's the middle right. What numbers does it face? 8 and 4. What's the gap? 4. It's a 4 gap. We need a 4 gap in our numbers facing against them, so left and down. X Atmo, which we're looking at, 4873, that 7-3 is a 4 gap. And when we play it there, because 8 plus 3 equals 7 plus 4, we're going to get another plus. Is it going to combo anything? Answer for yourself. It's helpful to pause and think for yourself as this is going. But the answer is yes, because that card we're flipping overpowers the only other card they've taken. So we're going to flip that one too. And indeed, we win the game 9-1. Combo is very powerful. So we're going to move to the next example. What's the square that interacts with 2 squares? We're going to start speeding up, but feel free to slow it down or pause if it's going too fast for you. It probably will be, because it really takes a while to get used to same and plus, and once you have it like built into you, it's pretty easy. But till then, it is a slow, arduous process, and take your time. Don't feel rushed in this. But the square is 8, the middle bottom square. That's the only square that interacts with 2. It faces an 8 and a 10, so we need a 2 gap facing up to the right. If we look through our cards, bottom card 1 gap, next card 1 gap, next card 1 gap, next card 2 gap, 7 and 5. Does it face the right way? It does. We have a card 2 higher up than it is to the right. We can plus an 8. Will this flip anything extra? Well, the card it's flipping is 5. Does that face anything it overpowers? The answer is yes. 5 again being the center. It's going to flip Carbuncle in the middle right in 6. Again, sorry if I say the squares in a way that you're not used to yet. And we're going to, again, get a combo there. All right. Can we identify the square we're looking at? Yeah, it's got to be 5. It's got to be the center square. That's the only square that interacts with 2 cards. What numbers are facing it? An 8 and an 8. That's a 0 gap. So we need the same number facing up and left. We have it. We have 5, 7, 8, 5. It's got those 2 5s. It's going to go in 5. Will it combo anything extra? Well, it's going to flip the card in the top center in 2, and that doesn't overpower anything around it. It's also going to flip the card in the middle left in 4, 8, 8, 4, 4, the Jumbo Cactuar, and that's 8 is going to flip the card in the top left in 1, and the 4 is going to flip the card in the bottom left. That's 7. So we're going to flip the whole board here. You can see the combo flips the last 2 cards, and we now have a fantastic position. All right, very similar position. We actually call this setup the L, and you can see it looks like an L, but actually the last position was an L2. Any rotation of it or way of flipping it around is still going to be an L. It just, can be rotated. So again here, the square we're going to look at is the middle center square is 5. We need something with a 2 gap because we see a 7 and a 5. So we're going to need a 2 gap. We're going to need something 2 higher left than it is down. We look at our hand. Bottom card, 6 and 3, that's 3 apart. 8 and 2, that's 6 apart. 2 and 4, that's 2 apart. Does it face the right way? Yes, it does. 5 plus 4 equals 2 plus 7. Will it combo anything extra? In this case, it will not. Neither of the cards we're flipping have a higher number facing out towards a card we don't already have. Either of them could flip the card in the bottom left in 7 if it wasn't already ours, but it is, so it will stay ours. Nothing extra will flip. And there we have that. Powering through more examples. What's the key square here? Again, it's 5. Again, it's the center square. What's the gap? The gap is 0. We need the same number facing up as we have facing right. We have 2 different examples in our hand. We could go either way here. And yeah, we're going to go in 5. It's not going to flip any extra cards here, but we can win this game quite easily by having this powerful plus effect. Let's move on to the next one. All right, here, interesting. This is a little more complex. We have 2 squares to check. We can check the middle left or the middle right. There are 2 different interactions. Again, you'll notice there are 2 cards that are diagonal from the center square, and there's a square touching both of those cards. Diagonals create combos. Diagonals are the really dangerous but really powerful thing we're looking at here. Do we have a way to plus in either square? Let's look at 4, the middle left square first. There's a 4 down and a 4 to the left. We need a 0 gap. We can quickly look through our hand. 1, 8, no. 7, 7, yes. 5, 3, no. So 7, 7, 4, 2, and 4 in the middle left square will combo. It will flip 1, the top left. It will flip 5 in the center. Those overpower the card in the top middle, so that will flip 2. Now, if that card overpowered another card, the combo could keep going. But sadly, that card 6 does not overpower Irvine's 10, so the combo does not continue. So we could just play that and be happy. But let's check 6 as well. 6 being the middle right square. There's a 9 down and an 8 right, so we need a 1 gap. 1 and 7, that's a 6 gap, not going to do it. 7 and 2, that's a 5 gap, not going to do it. 5 and 6, that's a 1 gap. Is it in the right directions? We need our higher number to face their lower number. Indeed, 6 faces 8, that's 14. 5 faces 9, that's also 14. So we have the option in plussing in 4 or in 6. Either one is really strong here. You could go either way and you're going to win this game. I'm going to plus the higher number just because I think that's more fun, and also we've had a bunch of 0 gap pluses and fewer 1 gap pluses. So let's see this one. Figure out for yourself, is it going to combo any card? I'm going to play the card in a second, but you can think, will anything be comboed? The answer is yes, the card in 2 gets comboed as well. All right. Now, this one I want to use to focus on something different. There are 2 cards that can be interacted with in one square, the top center square. They have a 1 gap, 9 and 10, so we're looking for a card with 1 higher to the left than to the right. If we look at our hand, we don't have it. You can check our hand. The bottom card, it's a 6 gap left to right. The next, it's a 2 gap. The next is a 2 gap. The next, it is a 1 gap, but it's facing the wrong way. The 3 faces the 9, the 4 faces the 10, so 9 plus 3 does not equal 4 plus 10. It's close, but it's the wrong way. So, why am I using this as an example? Because if we look at the opponent's hand, they do have a plus in 2. So even if we don't have a combo in one of these squares that touches 2 cards, our opponent might. And this is the easiest way to get yourself in massive amounts of trouble, is not noticing where the opponent has the combo. So what should we do? We should play something like 4, 4, 9, 10 in 2, in the top middle square. That'll block their square, and it'll flip Quetzalcoatl, and we'll just be ahead 3 cards. They won't be able to touch anything on board. We'll be in great shape. However, I'm going to play a really bad move to show what walking into a combo looks like and how frustrating it can be when we do. So I'm going to play this here, and you're going to see, hopefully, if the AI is at all smart, yes, it's going to plus, and that's going to combo an extra card, and suddenly we have nothing we can attack, and I've already used all my best cards. I'm now in huge trouble, and I'm going to lose this game. And so we've really got to be careful, even if we don't have that combo, at making sure they don't, and if they do, it is probably a square you want to block and get rid of immediately, or you're going to feel those really painful losses where the AI beats you and you have no idea why so many cards flipped. This is the kind of thing we got to be really, really careful about. So I think I have another example here of defense rather than offense. There's another empty square between 2 cards. This time it's in 4, the middle left square. 6, 10. We need a 6 gap to flip that 10 going up and down. We don't have it. Our top card's a 0 gap, our second card is a 2 gap, our third card's a 2 gap, and our fourth card is also a 2 gap, right? All cards with 2 higher facing up than facing down. We can't flip their card in 7 in the bottom left by going in 4. What we want to do is block 4, because they do have a card that does that. They need a 4 gap, and their top card, Belhamel, is 6, 2, 2, 3. That 6 and that 2 are going to be the 4 gap that give them that plus. We can't let this happen. We should block 4. And again, if we try to do something else, we are susceptible to walking into something really dangerous. There are situations where you have counterplay. There are other strategic concepts. This is actually a very complicated game. I think that really, the farther you go, again, check out ttadvanced.net if you want to really play against the best players. But for now, what we should be looking to do is play our own combos and not give them theirs. So here, a move that blocks 4, for instance, Red Giant or Rhinoa with a high number facing out, is going to be a much better idea than leaving it open. So, for instance, if we try to flip their card, we're going to find they're going to flip it back. We left them 4, we left them that middle left square, and now we're a little behind. Can probably still hold this game, but we're not in great shape here. Do I have another defensive example? Ah, yes, I do have another defensive example. Now here, what we should do is, because the same wall rule is on, which we haven't talked about, but the same wall rule says same is in effect, but walls count as 10. So if you have a 10 facing into a wall, you can use that to use sames on other squares. So for instance, if we put Squall here, it would same wall the card in 5, because 6 faces 6 and 10 faces the wall, which is 10, and that would combo, right? It would overpower the card in the top left in 1. It would same wall the card in 5, so 5 would set off a combo, 5 being the center, and that would flip the bottom center card 8 and the middle left card 4. It would flip everything. This would be a great move. What we want to be really careful about doing is stuff like Squall in 9 in the bottom right. We flip a card and it looks safe because we have a 10 facing out. But with same and plus happening, we have to check defensively. We just set up a square that interacts with 2 squares. When we go in 9 in bottom right, that middle right square now interacts with 2 squares. And this is really the level up of getting better at same and plus, is starting to scan for opponent sames and pluses. So we'll have a 10 facing up, and they'll have a 5 facing to the right. We're going to have to calculate. We're going to have to see the position before we make the move. That's going to be a 5 gap. Do they have a 5 gap facing down and facing left? They do. 7, 3, 1, 6. That 1, 6. 10 plus 1 is going to equal 6 plus 5. So if we play this move, it's not going to be safe, and we're going to get comboed really bad. So we could look at that, but I would rather play the same wall and watch the combo there. Maybe this is the wrong choice educationally, but let's play the right move. But checking this kind of move and seeing that it walks into a combo, that, oh no, we're playing diagonal to something, we've really got to check that we're not setting them up, is a really important part of not just getting really brutally punished. So we samed, and the combo flips extra cards. All right, here's our last concept. We've talked about spotting sames and pluses, looking for the squares that might have sames and pluses, looking for gaps so we're quicker at finding especially pluses, and finally we talked about blocking squares where the opponent has combos even if we don't, and considering whether we're setting up an opponent combo before we make our move. What I want to talk about last is using diagonals to set up our own combos, to make sure most of the combos are ours and not theirs. So they have a card, 6845, Abaddon, is on the board in 7 in the bottom left square. And my challenge for you, and this is not easy, is, and we could just play something, we could play Ruby Dragon just above it and capture that card. That would be a very good move. But it's not what I want to do right now. My challenge for you is look at our cards and see if you can find one. And this is hard. Find one that goes in 5 in the center square, diagonal to the action, and sets us up to have a same or a plus both ways against their card. Because there will be 2 squares that now touch both, the middle left and the bottom center, 4 and 8, after we go in 5 in the center. And so what you got to do is find a move that interacts, that sets up interaction in both those squares. Can you find it? I'm gonna start giving the answer. So if you didn't, now is your last chance. Now, one move that might have appealed, though probably didn't because people are loath to use such powerful cards, is Adia in 5 in the center. Because her 3 to the left and that 6 facing up in the middle left square will set up a 3 gap, and we do have that 3 gap. We have 1, 4, 1, 5, Gizzard. But it doesn't set us up in 8 in the bottom center. So the move is, and I hope you found it, but no worries at all if you didn't. Oh, another move that might have appealed to you is Blobra in 5, because the 1 going down and that 8 set up a 7 gap, and Adia with her 10 and 3 has that 7 gap. But again, it only sets up in one of the 2 squares. So if you found one of these, good job, but the best move is Ruby Dragon in 5, or the best move for what we're saying, because it sets up pluses in both squares. Now, they actually took a plus, but our Blobra could have gone in 4 and had the same plus. 3 plus 4 equals 1 plus 6, right? That's a 2 gap. We also would have had Wendigo in 4, because it has the same 3-1. But we also set up an 8 in the bottom center as well, because 7 and 8 have a 1 gap. And we have a card with a 1 gap, it's Wendigo. And so not only can we plus back, but it will combo the card they just played, Armadodo, in 4. And hopefully at this point, with, almost 30 minutes of explanation, I can go through this fairly quickly. We did just do a jump to something more difficult, but we're starting to check the diagonals. We're starting to see the diagonal can set me up for combos both ways, or one way, and I can then later use that and flip so many cards. So now we're going to look at another setup. They've played an 8-8 corner. We can't take it at all. We want to set up in 5. So maybe an easier way to start looking for the setup is to think, okay, we want to set up in 5 in the center square. It's going to need to set us up in both 2, the top center, and 4, the middle left. Because if it only sets us up one way, and they then block that square, we have nothing. We need to set up both ways so that when they block one, we punish them in the other. So, if Catoblepas is going to go in 2 and flip that card in 1, it's going to go top middle and it's going to flip the card top left. We're going to need a card in 5 that gives it a plus. So it's going to have a 7 facing that 8 and a 7 facing down. So if we understand plus at this point, we understand it's going to need to see an 8 facing up. Now we have an 8 facing up. So this should immediately draw us to, should 8528 Tripoint be the card that goes in 5? Well, that needs to set us up, goes in the center. That needs to set us up in the middle left in 4 as well. And that's going to have an 8 facing towards 4, and there's another 8 facing down towards 4. So we're going to need a 0 gap, 2 of the same number facing up and to the right, and in fact we have it. We have Ultima Weapon. So if we play Tripoint in 5, we will have pluses in both squares. Now you should check your other cards, figure stuff out, maybe there's multiple options, but this is the move we're going to go with here. And once they play next to it, or somewhere, we now have the option to flip both these cards in either 2 top center or in 4 middle left. Now we're just going to take the one that creates a lot more safety, but this is the first one we noticed we set up, but we also set up this move. We set up 2 ways to plus these cards, and we're going to take this one, and in fact they can't take anything at all. We have a really pleasant position. We're up 6-4, and they have no captures. One more example of this type. They have played another big corner with a 9 and a 10 facing out. My final challenge for you is, can you set up in 5 such that you can combo it both ways? And you can, again, I'm going to now start going through answers. You can think about, what do I need in each of the squares? Find something that works in one, and then one of those squares, and then see if it happens to set you up for the other square as well. I think that's the most kind of time-efficient way to do it. So, let's go through our cards. Let's start with Belhamel. If we put that in 5, well, you can either think of it, you can go through each of the 5 cards and think, if I put this in 5, does this set me up? Or you can think, 5 being the center, if this goes in 2 top center or 6 middle right, what would this need to set it up to be able to go there? You can think about it either way. For some, one of those will work a lot more efficiently than the other. Last time I sort of did look through our cards and think, what do they need to set them up? So this time I'll look through our cards and think, what happens if they go in 5? Does it set me up? So 3, 4, 5, 3, and 5. That is a 3 facing up. There's a 3 up, a 10 to the left. That's a 7 gap. Do we have a 7 gap facing the right and facing down in our hand? So we have to envision, we've put Belhamel in 5. We don't want to actually do it because we don't know if it works yet, but we're checking it. We need a 7 gap facing to the right and facing down. Blue Dragon, 5 gap. Mesmerize, 0 gap. Blitz, 2 gap. Laguna, 7 gap. Does it face the right way? No, but it is a same, so that would work. So Belhamel in 5 does set us up in the top middle in 2. Does it set us up in the middle right? Well, we have a 4 right and there's a 9 down, so we need a 5 gap facing up and to the left to face them. 6, 2, 7, 3, 3 gap. Mesmerize, 1 gap. Blitz, close but 6 gap. Laguna, close but 4 gap. It only sets us up one way, so Belhamel in 5 is not our move. Belhamel in the center. Let's try Blue Dragon. It's got a 6 facing up. So if we put that in 5, there's going to be a 10 and a 6 facing towards 2, facing towards the top middle. So we need a 4 gap, because 10 minus 6 is 4. Do we have a 4 gap facing to the right and facing down? Belhamel, 1 gap. Mesmerize, 0. Blitz, 2. Laguna, 7. We don't have it. Blue Dragon is not our setup. I should say, you won't always have a setup, but it's good to check for them because they have a lot of power when you pull them off. Mesmerize. If we put that in 5, it is a 5 facing up. So there's a 5 up, a 10 to the left. That's going to need a 5 gap. We need a 5 gap facing down right. Belhamel, 1 gap. Blue Dragon, 5 gap, 7 and 2. That works. It faces the right way. 7 plus 5 equals 2 plus 10. Just to check our other cards, 2 gap, 7 gap. So Mesmerize in 5 sets up Blue Dragon in 2 in the top middle. I've started just saying in 5 because hopefully you're used to thinking of center as 5 by now. What about that 3 facing towards the right? There's going to be a 3 and a 9 facing towards the middle right square, facing towards 6. That's a 6 gap. Do we have it? Well, let's check. We're looking for up left and we're looking for a 6 gap. 0 gap, 3 gap. This is the card we used. We can't use it twice. 6 gap. We've got it. 5, 3, 3, 4, and 5 sets us up both ways. Now I do actually want to note, we have a second setup both ways. And if you want to find it, it's one of the 2 remaining cards. One of them sets us up both ways. The answer is Laguna in 5 sets us up both ways because the 5 facing up works with Blue Dragons 2 and 7, and the 10 facing to the right works with Mesmerize's 5-3-3-4. The 5-4 part is a 1 gap, so the 9 and 10 plus with the 5 and 4. Which should we use? Well, this is beyond the strategy of this video. If you want to get into other strategies, I have lots of other videos about more complex strategy stuff. But in general, we should use the weakest card that achieves what we want achieved. And if we look at Laguna and we look at Mesmerize, it's pretty clear which is the weaker card. So we're going to play Mesmerize in 5. And that sets us up both ways. And when they block one of them, we get them on the other one. Do you remember which is our card to punish them in the middle right square? We have a plus there. There's a 6 gap, 9 and 3. That's a gap of 6. We have 1, 6, 4, 7 with its 1 and 7. Will it combo anything extra? Yes, it will, because that card we're flipping in 3, the top right, Irvine, overpowers Kyros in 2, the top middle, and so we're going to flip everything on the board. And given that they didn't rudely walk into another plus, this was my last example, so I hope you enjoyed learning a little about same and plus, and starting to think ahead to, oh, I can play on the diagonals and play really aggressively and set stuff up. Because I think you learn to play in especially FF8, and you play very defensively. You play very much, I got the Ifrit card, that's almost always safe early on, I can just play that. And then it's frustrating when suddenly it's not as safe. But we can take advantage of those sames and pluses, and we can set them up much smarter than the computer program in that game will, by understanding these diagonal setups. And that's going to give us a big advantage, and if we play out this game, we can use Laguna, he'll be safe. And we want to make our last move, making sure we don't set them up to have a plus. They have a 2 and a 1 facing up and right, so that's a 1 gap. We'll show them a 7 and a 9. They can't combo that, and we get the win. And that's the kind of way we want to think. Every time there's a square that interacts with 2 squares, we want to kind of quickly check, is there a same or a plus there? Because we want to be careful, because it's really frustrating when we get comboed, and it can be a really fun, exciting game when we're the ones setting up the combos and controlling all the space and comboing all their cards. So that's all I got. I really do recommend checking out ttadvanced.net. I'm also going to link to the site that I was playing on here, so you can practice on the site if you want to play here. What it does is you can set the rules you want, so you can make it open or closed. You can also set, do you want same wall on? Do you want same and plus on? Combo is inherent in FF8, but you can get rid of it here if you'd rather not play with it. In competitive tournaments, combo is usually, but not always on. Elemental, you can also flip on or off. I hate the elemental rule, but your mileage may vary. And sudden death is a way of tie breaking. And you just press the reset button, and it'll draw new hands, and you can play a new game and practice. And we can think, they just played this A9 corner. We can't take it. Can we set up against it? I hope I lucked into an example where we can, but I don't think I did. That's a shame. Would have been fun to reset it and immediately get a cool setup. But I think we can only set up one way, not both. So I'm not going to go any further on this example, but it's a fun site. Again, you can find it in the description and play around with it and practice getting used to the rules in a low-stakes environment. All right, hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers.